ChatGPT said. The sun hung low, bleeding red across the endless expanse of golden dunes. The desert of whispering bones stretched farther than sight itself. A sea of shifting sand where even the wind seemed haunted. Locals spoke of it only in murmurs, warning travelers never to cross after dusk. They said the desert had a voice. They said it spoke the words of the dead. Lena Farrow stood at its edge, staring into the horizon as if the answers she sought would rise with the heat. She had spent her life chasing her father's shadow, an explorer who vanished 2 decades ago searching for the fabled city of Zare. According to myth, Zare was a city of white stone and gold domes swallowed whole by divine wrath. The gods, angered by the arrogance of men, buried it beneath sand and silence. But the desert never forgot. It whispered the names of those who dared to seek it. Lena had read every fragment of his journal, traced every route, and tonight she stood where his final entry had ended. The wind is singing tonight. I think it knows my name. She crossed into the desert as twilight fell, each step sinking into centuries of forgotten bones. The air was dry, heavy with dust and something else, something that hung beneath her skin. The world grew quieter the farther she walked, until even her heartbeat felt muffled by the weight of silence. When the wind finally stirred, it carried with it faint voices that seemed to echo from nowhere and everywhere. "Turn back," they whispered. Lena froze, her lantern trembling in her grasp. The voice was thin, distant, but it spoke in a tone she knew too well. Her father's voice. "Father?" she called, her throat tightening. "Is that you?" The wind responded with a sigh that almost sounded like a laugh. Then came another voice, and another, layer upon layer whispers twisting around her, rising and falling like the tide. She spun in every direction, but the desert was the same, an unbroken horizon of dunes that seemed to pulse with life. The temperature dropped sharply as night deepened. Her lantern flickered, and in its dim light, she began to see shapes forming from the swirling sand. Faces, dozens of them. They moved like the reflection of candlelight on water, fading and reforming, eyes hollow but watching. "Who are you?" she demanded, though her voice was barely a breath. "The forgotten," they whispered. "The lost." The wind carried the words straight into her ear. She stumbled back, gripping her pack tightly. She knew she should turn back, but something stronger than fear pulled her forward, a desperate hope that her father was still out there, waiting to be found. Hours passed, though in the desert, time had no meaning. Her compass spun wildly, refusing to settle. The stars above her began to shift, swirling in strange patterns that made her dizzy to look at. It was then she saw it, a faint light flickering in the distance, like a beacon calling her name. "Lena." She heard it clearly this time. It was not the whisper of the wind, but the gentle, familiar tone of her father, the same way he used to call her home when she wandered too far as a child. Her breath caught in her chest. She started walking faster, then running. The light danced across the dunes, always just beyond reach, guiding her deeper and deeper into the desert heart. When she finally stopped, breathless and trembling, she found herself standing before what looked like the remains of a vast city buried beneath the sand. Towers half consumed by dunes, archways of pale stone glimmering beneath the moonlight. Zare. She had found it, but the city was not silent. The air thrummed with voices, some crying, some singing, some whispering things she could not understand. Every breath carried echoes of 1,000 years of suffering. The ground beneath her feet was littered with bones, bleached white by time. She knelt, brushing away sand from a small silver compass. Her heart stopped. The initials on the back were carved by hand. J.F. John Farrow, her father. Tears stung her eyes. "Father," she whispered. And then the wind spoke again, softly, lovingly. "Lena." She turned. He was standing there. Or, rather, what remained of him. A faint, translucent figure, smiling sadly as the wind rippled through him. He reached out a hand that flickered like smoke. "You shouldn't have come," he said. His voice was the same, yet carried an otherworldly echo, as if layered with 100 others. "I had to," she said, stepping closer. "I needed to find you." The figure shook his head. "The desert does not give back what it takes. It remembers us, but it keeps us. She tried to touch him, but her hand passed through empty air. The city called to me, he continued. Just as it called to you, it promised answers. But it only wants one thing, to be remembered. Every voice you hear is a memory, trapped in the wind. The bones beneath your feet are our anchors. Lena's voice trembled. I can free you. He smiled again, but the sadness in his eyes was endless. The only way to free us is to forget. Leave before it knows your name. The ground began to tremble. The dunes around them shifted, rising like waves. The wind howled, not in warning, but in hunger. 1,000 voices screamed her name, stretching into a chant that echoed across the desert. She clutched the compass and turned to run, but the sand moved like quicksilver, dragging her down. Lena, the voices hissed. Stay with us. She screamed, her lantern shattering as darkness swallowed her whole. When the sun rose the next morning, the desert was silent again. The wind carried no whispers, only a faint melody that faded with the dawn. A caravan passing days later found a single silver compass lying on the sand, still warm to the touch. And since that day, travelers crossing the desert of whispering bones sometimes hear a woman's voice among the others. Soft, distant, and full of longing. They say she calls out a single word, over and over, lost to the wind. Father. The desert, as always, listens. It keeps what it loves.